Hello, it is resident students and teachers. Hello, Mr. Wamba. Thank you. Sit down. Today will be our last lesson on the strand living things and the substrand ecology, relationship, and interactions. Our lesson topic for today is creating awareness. This is the lesson number 2. And we will be going through shared learning. What are some ways you and the community can do to reduce or stop the overuse of these materials which are non-biodegradable? Receiving students and the model class, your preparation, I think you should have posters and slogans on effects of excessive use of non-biodegradable materials and on ways to stop or reduce these activities. So our topic activity for today is peer teaching. You will have to get this information across to your peers, your friends, so that they will have some ideas on the uses and effect of non-biodegradable materials on living things. And your awareness topic for today is effects of excessive use of non-biodegradable materials on food web. Before I allow you to carry on this activity, where you will actually go out and do some awareness, first of all, we will have to look at something that has appeared on today's newspaper. Now, when we're talking about this topic, this is a very serious issue. Right, on today's newspaper, on Nationals, the front page shows river system in contaminated. When we talk about contaminated, we are talking about the system. The river system is being polluted or is being poisonous. All right, and when the river system is being contaminated, what do you think happens to the people? There are people living along the river who are depending on the river. They wash, they drink, and they fish from the river. Now, in this paper, the front page, it talks about Tolukuma mine, right? And the waste from this mining is being dumped into the river, right? The materials, the chemicals, and the metals like the lead, arsenic, and we have mercury, cyanide have been dumped. These are toxic, poisonous metals. What do you think will happen to these people who depend on the river to drink, to wash? Anyone can tell us what do you think will happen? These are non-biodegradable materials or chemicals or metals being dumped into the river system.
They will be affected when using the water.
Thank you. How do you think they will be affected? Now, this is serious. It's happening. It has happened. Now it's on the paper. All right. According to studies, we have some specialist doctors coming from Australia, and they did some studies on this. And they found out that these people who will be affected will live a more worse experience than those who have HIV/AIDS. So their experience in being affected by these metals, all this will be more worse. We have pieces of metals being dumped that eventually build up. All right, when people drink, wash, they have been affected. Even the living organisms that depend on the river are affected. So once they fish and catch the fish, when they eat them, they are also affected. So this paper talks about diseases that will be developed like cancer, abnormalities, deformity, infertility, and prolonged illness. People will get sick, get a little bit well, and get sick again. Those are effects that have already been developed in villages on people living along the river. And the impact is that it will take for years. So you and I, as students, as young people of this nation, have to come up with something on ways to stop this. So this awareness is very important when you are talking to your friends about these non-biodegradable materials. You will have to realize and know the facts, the impact that it has on us as living things. So according to the paper, the marine and the living organisms that are living in the water, the food chain there is also being affected. That is why you and I, who are partakers of this living organisms or involved in the food chain, we will definitely be affected. Now, our lesson activity in PS, it will teach about the effects of excessive use of non-biodegradable materials on food web. Now, consider these areas in your teaching. Non-biodegradable material, what is it, what are they, the food webs, excessive use, effects.
Today's topic is non-biodegradable materials. Non-biodegradable material cannot decay. They won't rot away because they will last for years. So non-biodegradable means materials that cannot decay. Okay, weedicides. We're going to work on weedicides, chemical that won't decay or decompose by other decomposers. Okay, weedicides is used to control weeds or kill. So when farmers apply this chemical here, the name of the chemical is weedicides. So once farmers apply these weedicides to plants or grass die away because they don't want them to weed, or maybe they are lazy. Okay, first, our picture here, it shows just before applying the weedicides. Okay, before the farmer applies the weedicides, it's a chemical used to kill weeds. Before he applies it, the plants or the grass grows healthy, and you see the color of their leaves are green, and they produce good nutrients. Okay, these organisms live in the soil. Okay, these organisms live in the soil. Okay, once leaves are fallen off from these plants, these decomposers, these animals or these organisms, name of these organisms are decomposers because they break down dead materials and plants. So once dead leaves or dead plants fallen from these plants, this worm or these organisms break them down, they manufacture them, and in return, these plants use them for nutrients. They make their own food through the process of photosynthesis. They use sunlight, good soil or suitable soil for plants, carbon dioxide, and the water. Okay, these roots here, it's part of the plant as a function. Okay, these roots, what roots does is it absorbs water that is in the ground. So it absorbs it, transport it to all other parts of the plant. Okay. And the leaves trap sunlight and they start to make their own food. These plants, we call them they are producers because they make their own food. We human beings, we live on plants because we cannot make our own food. So once, okay, this one is before upline, we decide these organisms and plants communicate together. They form food web. So once farmer applies, it's a barrel. Applying, we decide because the farmer sees many grass growing. So it applies, means spray them with weedicides because he or she want to kill this or control this grass or weeds. So once it applies this chemical, it's non-biodegradable, so it won't decay. It applies it, the chemicals sink in the soil. It won't decay. It sink. Once it sink, it affect all the organisms living in the ground. And these organisms, they are crying for help because they are affected by this chemical. So once they are killed or affected by this chemical, they die away and the food web started to break. No ecosystem between these plants and animals. So once they die, plants too suffer because they absorb water and nutrients that are manufactured or produced by these organisms. So once it applies, this chemical does not sink or rot away. It sink in the ground. It sink in the ground, or some chemicals that are washed away by rain flows down to rivers. Okay, the others sink and started to damage or kill all the organisms. And once this chemical sink, it kills, disturb the plants, or it kills them by destroying roots, affecting or polluting the water inside the soil. So once these plants here, once they receive that chemical, they started to lose their leaves. Okay, once some of the leaves are fallen, you see they are dying, they are calling out for help, help, help. This organism, we can't hear them. Okay, helps plants, they die out. As a result, if farmer overuse weedicides, it's a chemical that is used to control or kill weeds. So once farmer applies it, they died. And there will be no ecosystem between plants and organisms. As a result, these blue dotted lines here, these are weedicides. We say weedicides cannot decay or rot away. It will take for years. So once it sink, it affects all the organisms, plants in the soil. So it's worked for years. So you see, first poster here, we see lots of plants, green plants and the organisms. Second pictures, you see they're suffering now because of this chemical. And as a result or effect of weedicides, it kills or destroys all the plants and there's no organism in the ground or in the soil. And it also makes the soil unsuitable. If you plant or you want to harvest, you won't harvest enough because the weedicide is inside the soil. It's working. It won't decay. It will take some years. So, in order to don't use chemicals, use your 10 fingers here with them, or you can use grass knives, tractors to cut the grass or with the grass. So in return, once this grass decaying, they will make their own food. They will produce nutrients. So other plants that are growing, they will use the same nutrients that are produced by decomposers. So once you see there's no plant growing, so there's no living thing. So the food web started to break. Okay, you must use or see the disadvantages, advantages. Okay, for summarize, non-biodegradable materials are materials that cannot decay. Means they will decay for some years. Okay, chemical, weedicides, it's a chemical used to control or kill the weeds or grass. Weeds, it's also, weeds, you can say weeds or grass. Okay, non-biodegradable materials cannot decay. Okay, name me some non-biodegradable materials. Iron, timber. Timber, this non-biodegradable takes some years to decay. Yeah. So iron, timber, metal, some more. What's this? Table chairs. Okay, these are non-biodegradable. These materials are known as non-biodegradable because they won't decay or they can't decay. Okay, if we overuse this chemical here, if we overuse weedicides, it will kill other organisms live in the soil and makes the soil unsuitable for plants to grow. As we said it earlier, you see, if we overuse it, there will be no living things. You see, if you overuse it, you see, the farmer overuse it, it applies the weedicides, so there's no living things here. There's no living things here. So we must know the disadvantages and advantages. Okay, because it lasts for years. No, it destroyed them or it killed them because it lasts for years. It lasts for years to decay or rot away. Decay, another word for decay is rot away. It also affects the marine life when it is washed down by rain. Okay, it affects the animals or protein that are living in the river. Example, some animals or proteins, fish, prawns, eels. Okay, even so, it also affects the people when they consume or use the proteins from the river. It will affect when we eat fish. It will affect us because they consume or they use the chemical. Okay, for just suggestion, it is important to use our 10 fingers here. 10 fingers to weed the grass or by using grass knives, tractors to clear the area. If we use chemicals just for a moment, the soil is unfertilized. So after harvesting is over, when you want to harvest or plant plants again, you won't harvest. So once you use grass knives or tractors to clear the area, once these plants decay, the other plants will use it again, and they will live on those dead materials.
And one example of this, it was triggering you should have plastic containers, use other containers like glass, bottles, like you have safety. Safeness comes from where comes from the policy. Plenty of plastic containers in order for you to use new ones each time instead of overusing the same one all the time. You must have plenty of plastic, so you use a plastic container. So you use the first container, then keep it. Use the next container. Go using the then all the containers are used. The farming start again. Then use the first biodegradable material simply means things that cannot be decomposed or cannot decay, meaning cannot be broken up by living things. That's what it means.
Our summary for today: we, the community, must make it our responsibility to control the uses of non-biodegradable materials and minimize the negative effects it has on all living things. So that is our summary for today. Our next lesson, we are particles. That will be a new strand, substrand, and a new outcome. Our key phrase for today is still on good community. With that, thank you, receiving students, teachers, and model class for your participation.